Hey everyone! I'm Tara Lynn Pugh. I'm a mandala maker and facilitator of the Kaleidoscope Mandala Club, and welcome to the Color Palette Dot Along today. The whole idea behind these dot alongs is simple. We grab a brand new color palette and see where it takes us. So there's no preset design. I just kind of wing it. So there's no pressure for perfection. We just want to get into some creative flow and experiment with colors. So I'll be winging it right alongside you. You can follow me step by step, or you can wander off into your own design. Both are totally welcome here. The goal is just to play with some unexpected colors. If you're new to dotting, or if you enjoy creating along with someone in real time, I'd love it if you'd follow my channel and hit that like button. It truly means the world to small creators like me. You can also find me on Facebook at Tara Lynn Pugh Artist. Today we're working with the Relaxation color palette you see up here in the corner, and I will make that bigger for you so you can read off those names. But I've got my DecoArt colors here: Natural Buff, Amaze-mint, Eucalyptus Leaf, Burnt Umber, and Zinc. It looks kind of black, but it's just a really dark gray. And then my background here is black. So those are the colors that I'll be using. If you don't have the exact colors, you can totally just use similar colors. They don't have to be exactly the same. So I'm going to put that color palette up in the corner. I also have some gold just to use as an accent because I do feel like gold would look pretty. I've got my surface here. This is about 5.5 inches. And I've got a 16 arm stencil marked on there. So that is what I am using. And just grab a paper towel. There's always something I forget. And a baby wipe to clean off my tools. And then I'm going to go ahead and get started. I want my center, I have no planned design, but I did decide I want my center to be a little bit bigger today. I've been working a lot with I would say the last 10 or 15 mandalas I've made. I've started with a 10 millimeter center. So I really just want to kind of change that up a little bit. So I'm going to make this center 15 millimeters. I'm going to start with my 14 millimeter tool and Amaze-mint. And I'm just going to get that center nice and dotty. So when I work with these bigger dot tools, I like to start just a little bit smaller in case I get one of those bubbles. And then I'll go back in with a larger one. Just to kind of even things out. There we go. Sometimes it's hard to get a perfect circle when it's a little bit bigger, but I feel like I got there. All right, so 15 millimeter center. And then I am going to do some small dots. Let's see, 1.5 millimeters. I'm going to go around the center. I'm going to use the Natural Buff. 1.5 millimeters. I'm going to see how many dots I can make. First, I'm going to start with my main 8, so my north, south. I need to stir this up a little bit. Sorry, hold on one second. I've got a little film on there. It's making my paint behave a little weird. All right, so I've got my main 8, and I'm going to go halfway in between those. So I think we're going to stop at 16. So it was 1.5 millimeters with the natural buff. And I'm going to use eucalyptus leaf. I'm going to use my 3 millimeter stylus. And I'm just going to do a ring of 16 offset. So these are just going to go right in between that previous row. So 3 millimeters eucalyptus leaf. And then I'm going to do, that was 3 millimeters. I think I'm going to go up to 4 millimeters. And I'm going to use this burnt umber. I'm going to do a ring of 16. These will be on the lines. 4 millimeters and our burnt umber brown. Right, next, I'm going to use a small stylus, 1.5 millimeters, and I'm going to walk the dots up through these rings just to fill in some space. So I'm going to dip once, I'm going to use my gold, and I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to repeat that all the way around. So dip once, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Colors are just getting so dried out because of the heat in the house. Ugh. All right, next we are going to do, let's see. I'm going to get my 6 millimeter tool. Maybe 8. I'm going to go 8. 8 millimeters. And let's see, natural buff. And I'm going to make a dot every other space. So this would be next to where the double dots are. So I'm going to do 8 dots, 8 millimeters in natural buff. And then I would like to, I think I'm going to walk the dots around those. So I'm going to start with a 2 millimeter center. And Amaze-mint. So the first thing I'm going to do is my center dot, 2 millimeters. And then I'm going to walk the dots on each side with 1.5. So 2 millimeter center. And then we're going to walk the dots on each side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I can fit 8 comfortably on each side. It's up to you how many you fit comfortably, but just try to repeat that all the way around. I'm going to add another layer to this petal. So I'm going to get my 3mm tool and the eucalyptus leaf. I'm going to do a center dot. So it's 3mm eucalyptus, and then on each side I'm going to walk the dots with 2.5mm. This time I can fit 7 comfortably. All right, I'm going to get my gold. I'm using a Nouveau drop, so you can either use, I would say, a 3.5 or 4 centimeter dotting, or centimeter, 3.5 or 4 millimeter dotting tool, or if you've got Nouveau drops. I'm going to place a center drop at the top of each petal. And I would say this is about 4 millimeters. Might be about 4.5 once those beads settle, but I just want it a little bit bigger than the top of the petal. And then I'm going to take my 2.5 millimeter stylus, and I'm going to use Zinc. I'm going to pull a swipe. I know that's hard to see on camera. So I'm going to swipe on both sides of the petals. I figured this would be subtle, but I'm going to have to wait and see how it dries and see if it's noticeable enough. I might have to lighten that zinc just a pinch. I'm using it as it was right out of the bottle, but it's pretty close to that black. I don't mind subtle, but I don't want it to completely disappear. So I'm going to give that a few minutes. I'll finish my design, and then if I need to go back and lighten that a little bit, I might. We'll see. All right, I'm going to go back to my 8 millimeters dotting rod here, and I'm going to do Amaze-mint. And in the same ring where I've got these gold dots in between there, I'm going to add an 8 millimeter Amaze-mint dot. So there will be 8 of those. Every other space. I'm going to get my 2 millimeter stylus and let's see, the natural buff. I'm going to do a center dot, and then I'm going to walk the dots on each side. So 2 millimeter center. And then I'm going to walk the dots on each side. Seven or eight should fit comfortably. I do think after that zinc dries, I'm going to go over those swipes with just, I'm going to lighten that color just the tiniest bit, just a pinch. But I'm going to continue adding to this petal. I'm going to do a triple dot crown at the top. And I'm going to use the burnt umber for that, 3 millimeters. So I'm going to dip and dot, and then dip and dot right in the middle. So a little triangle there. This color palette is turning out pretty nicely. I don't use a whole lot. I don't focus too much on neutrals. But this is kind of a fun way to do neutrals with that little minty pop. And I think when I do the top dots, I'm going to tone down the mint just a little bit. But I like this. I think on a really larger piece, I think it would fit in a lot of different decor styles. All right, so we did 3 millimeter triple dot crowns with the burnt umber. And I'm going to get my 2 millimeter tool, my 2 millimeter stylus, and I'm going to swipe on the sides. And just kind of add another layer to that petal. There are just a few of these that didn't quite go as far as I would like, so I'm just going to fix those. Just a pinch. Most of the time, if I just left them the way they were, I would never notice later, but one of my goals this year is really to kind of step things up and do the absolute best I can. So that means being a little nitpicky occasionally. So we've got those swipes on each side. And then I think the last thing I'm going to do for the base design is I'm going to add a set of 4 dots up here on the end. And I do kind of want that to be, I want to make sure I line that up properly. So I am just going to pull extra line just right down from those gold dots. And then I'm going to cross that in half. This just helps me with my placement. You don't have to do this, but I like to make it easy on myself. Then I'm going to get my 3mm stylus. I'm going to use Natural Buff. Just mixing, I'm not adding anything. I'm just mixing up my paint because it's getting really dry in here. And so for this one, I'm going to do dot, dip, and dot, dip, and dot, and so I want a little set of 4. I'm going to do that all the way around. Make sure you don't make them too close so that you can fit all 4 of them. All right, I'm going to mute myself for just a moment. I'm going to dry this a little bit and then I'm going to top that. All right, one of the first things that I'm going to do, and you do not have to do this, but I am going to adjust that zinc just a little bit because I do want to see it better. And so I'm not going to do anything too crazy. I'm just going to take a little bit of this natural buff and mix it in there, and that should lighten it a little bit. Might even be able to take just a little bit of this Amaze-mint. That's a really light color too. And just lighten it, like not a ton, but just enough. Take it up like one shade. Because like I said, I do want it to be subtle. But I also want it to be visible to the eye. So I'm just re-swiping. I'm not adding anything different to this design. All right. So it doesn't look too different on camera, but it is much noticeable, much more noticeable to the eye. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my 10 millimeter dotting rod, and I'm going to use my eucalyptus leaf, and I'm going to make a top dot in the center. Here we go. On top of these neutral buff, I'm going to want about a 4 millimeter dot. I'm going to use gold, but if you're using a dotting rod, go ahead and choose 4 millimeters. And I'm going to place a gold dot right in the middle with my Nuvo drops. I'm going to use my 1.5 millimeter and my zinc, and I'm going to dip and dot on top of the ring of brown. 1.5 millimeters and zinc. to grab my 4mm rod and I'm going to use Eucalyptus. I'm going to add a top dot on these Amaze-mint dots. And guys, I think that's it. I think that's all I'm going to do for this pattern, with the exception of when this dries completely, and I am going to let this dry for a while, I'm going to add one gold dot in the middle. But I don't want to do it now because the paint right there is pretty thick and I don't want to ruin that. But I'm pretty happy with this design. It's not overly complicated. I do love this color palette. I think it's really pretty. It's a nice variation on neutrals, and I would definitely do it again, possibly on a bigger piece. I think using the neutral, the brown, and the zinc adds a nice neutral tone, and you could change up the mint to any two colors, kind of a pastel version and a muted version, and I think it would look really, really pretty. So if you created along with me, I would love to see what you've made. You can always share with me in my free Facebook group, Mandala Artists USA. You can post anything that you make in there. And you can tag me on the socials at Tara Lynn Pugh Artist. I would love to see what you create. I'm going to be doing these color palette dot-alongs every Friday, so go ahead and follow my channel. You can search for some of the past ones and experiment with some fun colors, and I'll see you next time, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you loved relaxation.